Hello, and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today, we're going to interview actor and UFC ring announcer Bruce Buffer. His famous catchphrase, "It's time," has made him synonymous with mixed martial arts and the UFC itself. He's also starred in movies and TV shows like Here Comes the Boom, Hot Tub Time Machine, 2, Holmes and Watson, Entourage, and many others. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. We also encourage you to like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so I encourage you to click on the notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities, so check them out. It's something you can buy for yourself as a gift or for someone you love. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's say hello to Bruce Buffer. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
Hi, John. I'm doing great. Staying healthy, staying well, as I hope you are too, my friend.
That's what matters. So, over the years, whenever I have met another fellow martial artist, I found that they usually tend to conduct their lives with a little more dignity, a little more integrity, and they usually have a stronger work ethic than the average person. And it appears that you clearly fall into that category. So I want to commend you on that, sir.
I thank you for that very much. I'm a very disciplined individual. I had great parents, have great parents. I lost my dad, but he was my role model and always taught me to treat everybody with respect.
Nice.
Treat people the way I want to be treated.
So now let's go back to the beginning and ask a really important question. Do you remember the first time you saw Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee? And what kind of effect did it have on you? Because when we saw it, when I and the other kids in the neighborhood saw Bruce in Enter the Dragon or the Green Hornet, it really inspired us. Do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yeah, well, I saw it when the movie came out.
Nice.
Because back then, let's see, what year was Enter the Dragon? Was that 72?
Yes. Yes.
72. So in 72, I had just moved out to Malibu, California from Philadelphia. And Enter the Dragon had a huge effect on me and my love and interest in martial arts, because I was always interested in Bruce Lee before Enter the Dragon. And it just reinforced everything to me. And then I started studying with a sport, or rather a style called Tang Soo Do, the Korean style that Chuck Norris started studying in the Air Force in Korea. And I was studying with Chuck Norris's fighting partners that lived in Malibu or taught in Malibu. And it really had an emphasis on me back then, as did Chuck Norris. And I would say it's probably the major reason that I got so definitely interested in the martial arts, even though I was heavily involved in judo before I ever saw Bruce Lee.
Nice. Well, it's interesting because as a teen, I studied something called Mudu Kwan Tang Soo Do. And so it's nice to hear those words again.
Traditional art, brother or sister, however you look at it, Taekwondo.
Yeah. So years ago, while working as a producer, I met two of the cast members of Enter the Dragon, Jim Kelly and John Saxon, and they could not have been any nicer. I never met Bolo Young, but I hear that he's 75 now and still in great shape. Have you ever met any of the other cast members of Enter the Dragon?
No, I haven't. Not of that film. Bolo, I saw that article on him recently. I think he's actually like 82.
Wow.
I think he's older, but he looked amazing. Maybe he is 75, but I think he might be older, because Bruce Lee right now would easily be roughly in the area of about 81 or 2 now, I think, if he was still alive. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we checked and we kept seeing different ages for Bolo, so who knows?
Yeah, who knows? They're actors. You never know. But you know what? He looks good. He's Bolo, and we'll give him all the respect in the world.
There you go. So at some point, you became interested in jiu-jitsu. How old were you when you became interested in it, and how did that compare to karate for you?
Well, I studied a little jiu-jitsu when I was cross-training in my early years, my late teens and early 20s. But my first realization of the art of jiu-jitsu and what it would do, I'd had a lot of beach and street fights in my life, let's say. Okay, like, we all go through what we go through. And most of the fights that I ever been in always went to the ground. But in 1991, film director John Milius, who wrote and directed Conan the Barbarian, Red Dawn, wrote Apocalypse Now, a very famous director. He was studying jiu-jitsu at the Gracie Academy in Torrance. And he asked me, he goes, I know I was kickboxing very heavily back then. And he said, I know you're enjoying kickboxing, you're fighting and all that stuff. I was never a pro, just doing what I did. And he said, come with me. Let's go train some jujitsu. I said, John, I have trained some jujitsu. He goes, you never trained Gracie jujitsu, right? So he took me to a dojo in Torrance, California. And in Torrance, California, we went in and it was the Gracie dojo. And out walks this tall, thin kid, says, hi, my name is Hoyce. How are you? And he says, come with me. And we're walking and he takes me into one of his dojo rooms. It's empty, all padded up, the walls and the ground. And he closes the door and he says, I hear you're a kickboxer. I hear you like to fight. I go, come on, let's have some fun. Come at me. Take my head off, right? So I said, do you want me to put on some gloves? He goes, no. Let's just go for it. Come on, come at me. So I went at him. I was game. And about 45 seconds later, after he got underneath my punches, he took me down to the ground, took me into a side choke, choking me out. I'm almost going out. And he goes, tap, tap, tap. So I tap, and I'll never forget this, John. He straightens out his gi, sits up in the guard, straightens out his gi and says, see, isn't it nice not to get hit in the face, right? That was probably the real true realization of the beautiful art of jiu-jitsu. And I should have continued training with Royce back then because I would easily be a black belt personified by now. My problem was his dojo was too far away from where I lived. Otherwise, I would have gone. So that's one regret I have in my martial arts background is that I did not continue to train with the master Royce Gracie. And then when he came out in 93 at the first UFC with his hands on the back of his brother's shoulders or family shoulders, he's running out. I looked at my family and friends watching this with me. I said, see that skinny kid right there? He's going to beat everybody, right? And we all know what happened after that. So jiu-jitsu was a style that was the style to beat. And then it became mixed martial arts. And today in the UFC, I believe that wrestling is probably the best base, with jiu-jitsu being the second best base to learn from.
What kind of business were you involved in before you became a ring announcer for the UFC?
I have owned my own businesses since I was 16. I started a jewelry business. I was selling jewelry in high school. I'd make it and sell it. It was just a hobby. I wanted to make enough money to take my girlfriends out to nice dinners and and have fun myself. But that attitude, that entrepreneurial attitude carried forth with me because I had jobs before that. And I got in the telemarketing world. I was in college and I started I saw on a board, a job card board, it said earn $250 to $450 a week selling part-time over the telephone. And of course, going to school for business, I obviously wanted to continue to make money. So I thought I have a gift of gab. I'll go in and see what this is all about. So long story cut short, I was working from 5 a.m. until noon every day and going to school from 2 to 10 o'clock at night studying business. Within the first 2 weeks, we were selling office supplies. And within the first 2 weeks, I became the number one salesman. And then I saw the sales manager, and this is back in 1975, 76, and I'm making like $800 a week back then, which you can imagine how much money that is today. Then I saw the sales manager sitting back watching everybody making his $1,500, $2,000 a week. And I go, I want his job, right? So I had his job. I became the sales manager within 2 more months. Then I decided I could start my own business. I was tired of watching the owners driving their Ferraris and their Porsches and realizing I was creating all the sales with my team and my crew. And, they were shipping, I was selling. So why not start my own business? So I started my first corporation in 19. And 80% of the sales force left to go to work for me. And I wound up getting sued for $1 million at 19 years old by the previous owners. One of the worst summers of my life. I was young. I didn't know how to deal with that. I dealt with it though. Long story cut short, I went back to work with them. The salespeople came back. That's all they wanted.
Wait. You went back to work for the guy after he sued you?
Because I knew the guy and I met with him and the attorney bills were getting ridiculous. The whole thing was taking all my wind out of my sales of my new company, all my dreams, all my aspirations. It was just too much. It was too much duress,
right?
Mental duress.
Right.
So I decided at 19, I'd made a decision. I went back, I talked with them, and I realized that their main thing is they had lost so many sales. Their sales, they needed me back. Mm-hmm. So I said, then let's just get past all this. So they paid for my attorney fees. I went back to work for them. They want to pay me more money going back to work for them. And they wanted making me part owner in the business. And actually in a long, rough way, it all worked out. Then later on, I had an import-export company. I had a security company. I put in alarm and camera systems in restaurants and homes all over Los Angeles. Did very well with that. And then I saw that Herbalife was doing very, very big sales and how they were doing their business. And over the course of a year, my partner and I put together Western and Eastern medical doctors, and we created our own nutritional company called Herbal Care. and went into competition against them and did quite well with that until the government got down on Herbalife about their false labeling on their products and some issues they had. So if you had the name Herbal in your business, you were like the kiss of death at that point. So that was the end of that business. And then I went on to do other work, motivational speaking, went back into telemarketing. And then at 28 years old, I met my brother, Michael Buffer, who I never met before in my life, my long lost half brother. I was a huge boxing fan. Out on the screen, HBO boxing, pay-per-views, comes this elegant James Bond looking individual dressed to the nines, great voice, saying the famous 5 words, let's get ready to rumble. But there was something that happened that made me think. They kind of run on the screen his name, Michael Buffer. And I'm like, wait a second, Michael Buffer. Because I looked at every phone book in the United States in my telemarketing companies. We didn't have the internet back then, so it was a natural thing to do. I never saw my last name in a phone book anywhere in the United States.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm like, who is this guy? So lo and behold, I started calling Bob Arum, Don King's offices, trying to find all the information I can. People are stopping me in the street saying, is this your brother? The guy that goes, let's get ready to rumble. I go, no, my brother's Brian. The man I grew up with is my brother my whole life. I'm driving with my dad up north after about 6 months of this. And I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, I've asked this before, but I got to ask you again. Do you have any idea who this guy is? People are just coming up to me all the time. He's getting more famous. And I got this. I think that's your brother. I'm 28, 29 years old. My dad finally admits to me that during World War II, he was married briefly for 9 months, went overseas to do his part in the Pacific. And while he was gone, his son was born, who he last saw when he was 2.5. And it turned out to be his son, Michael. And Michael was never formally adopted. He was raised by wonderful foster parents, had a very wonderful upbringing under the name of Huber. But when he went in the Army at age 20, they said, your birth certificate says Buffer. You're not Michael Huber, you're Michael Buffer. That was the stamp of approval they gave him that he kept forever. And had that not happened, we might not be having this conversation right now.
So you met your brother face to face. You guys have an initial meeting at some point. Mm-hmm. What about him and that meeting caused you to think that you could do business with this man who you've known for a very short time?
Well, at that point, it was more of a fascination. And I'm a businessman and a brander and marketer, first and foremost, before I'm an announcer or performer. But my mind started wondering, this is really a great job. If anything, at first, I thought how cool it would be to have that job, right? And over the course of 4 years, I would go to fights. I'd stop off in Vegas. We'd have dinner. I'd go to the fights. We'd have dinner afterwards. But I had an epiphany November 16th, 1992, at the very first Riddick Bowe Evander Holyfield fight at the Thomas and Mack Center, which was sold out, some 20,000 plus boxing fans. And when he went into his Let's Get Ready to Rumble that night, I'd seen it before, but that night it struck me, Hulk Hogan, Jack Nicholson, all these celebrities, everybody in the arena just jumping out of their seats going crazy. And he hadn't even so much as trademarked this phrase properly yet, right? So again, a long story cut short, I met with Michael. After I went back to my room that night and incessantly wrote 3 pages of notes, make toys, video games, movies, TV, trademark Let's Get Ready to Rumble to protect it the best way possible. Make it part of American culture on the tip of everybody's tongue, put them in basketball, football games, everywhere, using the boxing ring as just the base to build from, as I build all businesses from a base. And I met with him and I said, Michael, I didn't go out the other night. I just wrote notes, and I'm burned out. I was burned out on my telemarketing business and another business I had. When I say burned out, I'd wake up and I was going to work. I wasn't enjoying myself. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing anymore. And I have to be passionate to drive me to deal with all the ups and downs you have to go through in business. So even though I was making fantastic money, beach house, the whole wonderful life, I decided to quit with the money I had in the bank. And I said, Michael, I will quit with the money in the bank. I'll sell both companies. And I want to become your partner and your manager. I want to trademark this phrase properly, make you richer and more famous than you ever dreamed, hopefully myself in the process. And I need to be your manager and partner to do that. And he said, well, that sounds great, but how are you going to do all that? And I said, I really don't know. But if I'm going to give all this up, you better believe I'll figure it out. And I did. And we built the Let's Get Ready to Rumble brand into a $500 million brand with all that, which basically is, when I say that $500 million, that's not money in our pocket. That's the gross amounts, give or take, of all the ventures and licenses and everything we've done over the last almost 30 years together. So it's been an amazing walk in life with my fantastic, legendary brother, Michael, who I love very much. But at the same time, when we decided I would not be an announcer because it would be a confliction, I wouldn't do boxing, I said, that's okay, something will come along. And the UFC came along, and my job as his manager is to get him in every big event there is. So I got him into UFC 6, 7, and Ultimate back in 1996. And then we had a big big contract, very valuable contract with the WCW Wrestling League, which was very big back then. And the biggest things happening. And they called me on a Monday after I got on that first gig in the UFC, and they said, Bruce, why are you having a UFC when you have an agreement with us? I said, because my agreement with you allows him to do everything else that I want him to do. Well, we're not happy, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, look, he can't continue to grow with the UFC at the pace they're probably going to go at. I have a 3-fight contract. You can't do anything about that. I'll have him complete it, and then we'll keep him with WCW because the money was so huge. And Michael loves wrestling. He has so much fun doing wrestling. Mm-hmm. When that happened, I called them and I said, look, you need a buffer in the octagon. You need me to be the announcer. I need to grow with you as the announcer. I won't just be an announcer. I'll help you build the brand with my media contacts and what I like to do normally in life. And it fell on deaf ears. I didn't get hired. So I got contacted by a fighter named Scott the Pitbull Ferrazzo who sent me a videotape, and he was that 6'1", arms down to his ankle, Neanderthal looking monster that the UFC loved to bring in the octagon back then. And lo and behold, they hired him for a fight at Baimon, Puerto Rico, February 16th, 1996, 25 years ago. Yes, 25 years ago. And I went down with my fighter. I called the owner, said, my tuxedo's in my bag. I'm coming down with my fighter, as a manager can do with the way they arrange it. I said, but I want to announce fights for you. Let me show you what I got, because you need me as the announcer. I come from you don't get things in life unless you ask for it. I don't wait for things to happen. I make them happen. And that was my idea, to ask for the job. So they allowed me to do the prelims, which I did. And I thought I did a good job, but then they did not hire me. 6 months later, they gave me a call saying that they needed me in Dothan, Alabama to do a full show, which was UFC 10. And I went down and did that show on 2 days' notice. Then they hired somebody else, right? A friend of the producer. And I still would fly into New York, meet with them, ask for the job. And then finally, I got a call a year and a half into this whole venture of wanting to try and become the announcer. And they asked me to co-star on the TV show Friends. And Warner Brothers wanted me to be myself, the announcer on the show. So I go on to Friends. I co-star as myself with Jon Favreau and Big John McCarthy, the referee, and Tank Abbott, a fighter. And I met with the owner and I said, look, I feel like a girl waiting to be asked to the prom. I'm going to ask you one more time. I want this job. I will do everything I can to help you build this brand, more so than just be an octagon announcer. You need me there. I need to grow with you as the announcer, grow with you the business, and then we can grow together. And it was the best poker hand I ever played in my life. That's when I got the job.
You know what the beauty of that last answers of yours was? You just answered about half a dozen of my questions right through them.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. So do you still train? And if so, do you ever train with UFC fighters, or have you ever trained at the Performance Institute?
No, I've been to the Performance Institute. I haven't trained there because usually when I'm there, I'm just visiting. Do I still train? Yes, I just got done doing an hour and a half training, of which 45 minutes was boxing and the rest was cardio and weights. So I train every day. I'll be 64 in May. I'm probably in the best shape I've been in probably the last 20 years. That's, of course, on the inside, there's a lot of kinks and stuff, from all the stuff I've done in the past. But I will never stop training, always train.
What about nutritionally? Do you do intermittent fasting or anything like that?
I have done intermittent fasting. It does work. Right. But what I mostly have got myself involved with, I've actually lost about 20 pounds over the pandemic period. Not that I needed to lose weight. I just decided to get in a trimmer, better shape than I was in, even though I was in shape. And it's all portion control. I truly believe that aside from proper nutrition, whether you're a I'm kind of a pescatarian. I'm a half vegetarian, and I enjoy a piece of meat once in a while, but for the most part, it's fish, chicken, and vegetarian food. But it's all about portion control, because to me, to be in shape, it's 75% what you eat and ingest and 25% how you work out.
Very interesting parallels between your life and mine, because this year I also modified my diet and I went on a low carb diet. Mm-hmm. And it was unbelievable. So that's what I'm sticking with at the moment. And I think the benefits are just fantastic. Now, I also see that you're a very successful poker player, and this intrigues me because most of the world-class poker players tend to have tremendous math skills. Was that your background back in the day, or was there some other skill set that you brought to the game which made you successful in that arena?
The math skill, I do have math skills. I skipped grades in math, and I was very good at your basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Once I got into trigonometry, it just lost. I said, I'm not going to be an astronaut. This is not for me. I know it's great. I love math, but your basic math skills are needed in poker. But my dad taught me how to play poker when I was 9 years old. He taught me poker and blackjack and horse racing. And basically he said, win like you're used to it, lose like it doesn't bother you. And then the poker we played back then was 5-card stud, 7-card stud, and draw, 5-card draw. I was playing cash games in poker with my brother Brian at 14. And we were making money at poker, playing cash games at our house at 14 and 16. And then my dad taught me about blackjack, which is my other one that I consider myself really good. I actually paid my bills for 6 months in between ownership of companies by flying to Vegas to make $4,000 to $5,000 at the blackjack table to pay my bottom line bills I needed to pay every month. This is going back into the early 90s or mid 90s when I was changing companies before I took over Michael, right? So horse racing, my dad was very funny. He said, son, I'll teach you about horse racing. He said, the only way to follow a horse is with a shovel. Don't bet on them, which I appreciate that advice. Although I always enjoy a nice day at the track, but it's not my way of gambling. Poker, when 2003, in the World Series of Poker, when Moneymaker won, it became very popular, the Hold'em. And then I switched over to Texas Hold'em, got very big in Texas Hold'em play. In 2003, I entered my first tournament in 2005 and bubbled a final table at the in Atlantic City. And then the second tournament I ever entered was the World Poker Tour. And I made the final table, and I went on TV and played the final table in the World Poker Tour, my second tournament ever. And that's when it just hooked me right there.
But that in and of itself is a very significant achievement, because if you watch these televised tournaments, there are a lot of people playing in the beginning, a lot. So
yeah, I was the top six finalists out of about 451 people in that tournament. If you look on cardplayer.com, it's like a tennis player. They show all the money you've made in the tournaments you've won. And I think on the professional circuit, I'm shown to win in the area of 350 to 400,000. I think they have me down there, my winnings. And as a matter of fact, which I take great pride in, but I'm going to be playing on Poker After Dark the end of this month against Phil Hellmuth and Maria Ho. 6-man sit and go. We're each putting up $10,000. Winner will get 50, second will get 20. And that'll be televised on Poker After Dark probably in the next couple of months. I'm very excited about that because I have not played any live poker since the pandemic hit. But we'll all be tested and, COVID tested and as safe as we can be.
Now, a lot of the professional poker players I have met, they'll win and then they'll continue playing until they give it all back. Do you see that phenomena a lot, or is that rare with the high-end professionals?
No, I can't say about the high ends. The one thing I've noticed is people will do one thing. They will basically say, they'll say, I just won 10,000, but then they won't tell you about the 5 times they lost 20, right? So what I do, and I can't answer for anybody else, I say you're either going to get a truism or you're going to get something else. But with me, every time I gamble, whether it's blackjack or poker, or if I put a bet on a football game, which are the only 3 areas that I will bet money on, I have a program on my computer. I know every day where I played, what I played, how much I won, how much I lost, tally at the end of the month, tally at the end of the year. I treat it like a business. That way it's realistic to me, okay? And I've only had 2 losing years in 15 years. And I think part of it is being realistic with myself and not thinking, oh, I won 10,000, let me go spend it. Because the best money to spend is the money you win when you're gambling. It's the most fun money for me to spend. But I treat it like a business. I'm very realistic. And I think most of your top end poker players are too. But yes, we hear stories like that all the time. All the time.
We really didn't know about your business background until we began researching you. Everybody knows about your UFC career and your card playing path, your poker path. But you and your brother, Michael, brought the Let's Get Ready to Rumble video game to market, and it became a huge success. What was more difficult? What was the most difficult part of developing that game? Was it bringing it to market? Was it putting together the technical aspects of the project? What were some of the challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge on that game was I originally went to Midway, who created Mortal Kombat. As a matter of fact, Netflix or Voodoo, there's a really cool special on video games which focuses on Midway and their success. I went to Midway and I pitched them on the fact that they should do an arcade style game with characters similar to Punch Out. They don't need real life characters and pay a bunch of licenses, and that will name it Let's Get Ready to Rumble or Ready to Rumble. Have Michael, be the announcer, which will give them a tremendous amount of publicity when the game comes out, because boxing was so huge back then in 1999. Not that it's not now, but it's nowhere near as big as it was back then. And it was my idea to create this game. Well, it fell on deaf ears a little bit. It's my term when it doesn't work. So then I was negotiating with EA to have Michael in one of their games, but I wanted to own part of the game, and they wouldn't give us ownership. So I turned down that, and lo and behold, 6 months after I pitched Midway, I got a call from Midway saying, "Hey, Bruce, we have a great idea. We're making this arcade-style boxing game with characters over the top, and we want to call it Ready to Rumble. Is this something you'd be interested in?" Now, remember what I talked to him about 6 months before, right? But I come from the school that in Hollywood and in entertainment, if it's not their idea, it's not going to happen. It's just one of the things I believe. So I have no ego when it comes to this. I have constructive ego to make the deal, right? So I said, "Oh, that sounds great. Let's do it. Let me come down and meet with you." So I went down to San Diego, negotiated with them. We wound up owning part of the game, aside from the monies that were paid up front. The game was amazing. It came out on Dreamcast, did $97.1 million in retail sales in the first 24 hours between the Dreamcast module and the 10 games released, which our game was one of them, which set the record for the highest number of sales in 24 hours in entertainment history. And we were on the cover of Hollywood Reporter or Variety, one or the other. It was a big moment for us. So the challenge on that was getting them to agree to make the game. But when I do these deals for toys and for things, whether it's through my trademark, It's Time, or Let's Get Ready to Rumble, the deal is that they have the pipeline of distribution. They have the teams to develop. I watch over it and approve everything and involve myself in the creation and the marketing of it where needed. So I got with a multi $100+ million company who grabbed onto the idea, and that's the key. I grab onto people that have a pipeline of distribution and all the ability to make it, and then we go for it. That's how I run these different businesses. For instance, I just came out with my bourbon, Puncher's Chance.
My next question.
Right, same thing. So, and I'm very excited. Thank you. By the way, the video game I'm currently working on, I have made the formal announcement, but I'm working on Ready for Rumble. I'm working on the number 4 version of Ready to Rumble as we speak with an Australian developer. So that's the same way that I created this. I spent over a year. I found partners that were making an amazing bourbon. The Puncher's Chance received a 95% rating from the tasting board that rates spirits in America, which is phenomenal. It's considered the highest rated bourbon at its price point in America today, and it's selling like hotcakes. I'm very excited about this. My partners were behind Sammy Hagar's Cabo Wabo tequila, if you remember that, Skinny Girl, popular brand, and Campari. So I get with the best people that have the best business acumen. And the thing I'm sorry if I'm promoting myself, but the thing I love about this, and John, we're talking about this whole interview. Life is all about the puncher's chance, how one punch can change your life, how one decision can change the whole pathway that you're on. And that's why I developed this. And it's just very proud of it. It's a big hit.
What was more challenging for you, developing and bringing Puncher's Chance to market, or developing the video game?
I would say probably Puncher's Chance, because once I convinced Midway of everything to do and they came back to me as I explained, then it was just about signing the proper documents and the machine was ready to roll. And all about was just creating the best entertaining game possible. And their game developers were so fantastic that it was just a smooth project from that point. As a matter of fact, I wrote in my book, the first royalty check that we received was unbelievable. I opened the check backwards and I pulled it backwards out. So I saw like 00 decimal point. Then I saw 5 numbers, thought, oh, we made 50,000. And I said it in my book, but I won't say it on the air, but then another number came out and it was a high 6 figures in that first royalty check. And that was such a phenomenal point in both Michael's and my career for our licensing and branding of the great phrase, Let's Get Ready to Rumble.
Where can people purchase Puncher's Chance today?
Puncher's Chance is in about 25 different states now in the United States. If you follow me on Instagram, which is at Bruce Buffer, I usually give out all the information there. Right now in California, we're at 160 Bevmo stores. We're going to 2,000 Smart & Final stores. We're in Winco in Florida. Costco and it's there. If you go to your local store in the United States and they don't carry Puncher's Chance, just ask the manager of the store to bring Puncher's Chance in.
By the way, did you just say you're in Costco's?
And we're going into Costco in Texas, yes. And we're working on Costco in other areas too.
So is that a regional test?
In Costco, it'll be I think they're going to put it in a certain amount of stores.
Right.
Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits is one of our key distributors, and they're handling all this for me.
Gotcha. So, Dan Aykroyd and George Clooney have had tremendous success with their beverages. Do you plan to distribute Puncher's Choice overseas as well?
Well, it's Puncher's Chance, and thank you. It's okay, I make the same mistake once in a while. Puncher's Chance, and we are planning on going into Canada. We are going to work on overseas, but right now we want to concentrate on the United States. There's a lot to accomplish here. Diageo, the company that bought George Clooney's company and also bought Ryan Reynolds' gin company recently for $600 million, they showed interest in us before we even released our first bottle. And the average craft distributor sells 3,800 cases in the first year. We've moved 10,000 cases in the first 3 months. We're on target to move 35,000 plus cases this year. And next year, basically, we're looking at a 5-year run that our goal is to move 500 million cases, 300,000 to 500,000 cases in the next 3 to 5 years. People will come at us based on what's happening and offer us nice figures to sell the company. I'm not interested in selling the company. I'm a partner in this company. I want to build this company to a $500 million to $1 billion brand, if at all possible, and then we'll entertain the sale.
Before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you would like to promote?
I appreciate that, John. Well, I'm going to show you something that I've only shown one other person, okay? I just got in my prototype. I am releasing my own line of toiletries all over the world. The It's Time cologne, body wash, moisturizer, face wash, everything. You're going to see the It's Time cologne in airports, in duty-free shops, Walmart, Walgreens, you name it. This is going to be everywhere. This is all over the world. This is a big project I've worked almost 2 years on. I'm very excited. The scent, it's amazing. I'm with the top people that make and distribute perfumes and colognes around the world. I am very excited about this project.
So it's been a real pleasure talking with you. I want to wish you continued success, and thank you for being so generous with your time. And of course, you're always welcome back on the show, sir. Goodbye.
John, thank you, sir.